Craig Vaughn is a senior product manager for Practical Law. Prior to his current role, Craig managed training and go-to-market strategies in the legal tech industry. He recently rejoined the Practical Law team after building the training program and an e-learning platform for Kira Systems. Jane Lippman is a member of NoCal. She has been with Thomson Reuters for almost 30 years, working in a variety of roles. Currently, she's an information management advisor focused on providing service to the information professional community. Jane has a JD, and she's currently working on her MLIS at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Jane lives in Minnesota with her family. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jane. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kristen, and thank NoCal for inviting us to speak today. We're really pleased to be here and to be part of the Spring Institute. I invited my colleague and friend, Craig Vaughn, to present today. He works with an amazing product, Practical Law, and we were thinking it was very timely with COVID and also with summer associates and interns and law students that you all work with. This could be a resource that they may not be as familiar with as, say, something like Westlaw. So wanted to be able to provide some additional value there. And also Craig is an amazing presenter. So with that, Craig will really do the presentation, and I'll keep an eye on chat and also interject a few questions. So if you do have questions, please enter them into chat, and we'll make this as interactive as possible. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Craig. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Jane. Jane, yeah, thanks for adding that pressure there at the end. It's like you might just jinx me. It's like whenever somebody starts a meeting, they say, "I don't think we're going to meet the whole time." You end up meeting the whole time. So I hope that works out. It's really nice to be here. Thank you so much for the invite. I've been with Practical Law since January of 2010. And as Kristen mentioned, I moonlighted for a little bit, but I ran back to Practical Law because it's just such an amazing product. I work with a great team, and our subscribers just absolutely love us. So it's just a pleasure to present. Okie dokie, so let's get this show on the road. When Jane asked me about doing this, I was like, oh, I think we have lots of content that we can talk about. It's really been quite a year. So here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to start with COVID. You may be tired of hearing about that, but the market sure is not tired of hearing about that. And then we launched a bunch of enhancements that were actually quite timely. And we'll get into those. Commercial lit, expansion of our existing life sciences and FDA regulatory. We got some new videos, resources. Our healthcare is huge. And we just launched sectors yesterday. So if you haven't heard, it's really hot off the press, fresh out of the oven. Folks, as we go through, if you have any questions about anything, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm not like scripted to a fault sometimes, so we'll do our best to do that. But I just wanted to show you what happened in 2020. Like, look at all of these numbers. We produced all sorts of new resources. It's not like buying a set of encyclopedias, right? We're always adding more value to that. It's a lot of information, but just check out there at the bottom. The maintenance aspect of Practical Law is very valuable. Anytime an attorney or yourselves need to get up to speed on something, the best resource out there is simply another attorney, right? Somebody who's actually done that work before. And our editors spend 30% of their time simply updating the existing resources. Over 150,000 hours were clocked last year, just simply updating it because of changes in the market. Because when people come to Practical Law, every resource we have is a vehicle to have that one-on-one, like walk down the hall, hey, what do I really need to know about this topic? And you couldn't do that if it wasn't a living, breathing resource. So we'll keep moving along. We have over 300 full-time attorney editors now. The average was 12 to 14 years, but it's actually skewing up a bit more. A little bit about our process. Starting in November or in the fall, everybody starts planning their content plan for the next year. They go through and start figuring, okay, are we missing anything? Do we need to take over some resources that were contributed? You know, are there any holes? Where's the market going? And sometimes it takes a resource a couple of weeks to get through the process before we publish it. Sometimes it takes a couple of months, just depends on how deep it is. So we had a plan for 2020, and then dun, 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 you know what happened, right? COVID-19 happened, and it really impacted almost every practice area. And a business that's based on precedent and a legal system that's based on precedent, I mean, it was just unprecedented, right? Everybody used to go look at previous work product. There's no previous work product to look at for this sorts of stuff. So I want to show you how our editors pivoted. First off, you know, starting, I believe, in February, we created the Global Coronavirus Toolkit, and I think it had like a dozen resources in it. Within weeks, it got up to like 89 resources, and it was just like one long list of things. And most of these resources were actually free. We wanted to support both our subscribers and people who weren't subscribers, because it was just, you know, unprecedented. It was chaos, right? And so we organized everything by country. You've got lots of resources. There's over 500 resources in there. I think it's like 580 or something. So it's well over 500 resources, and many of them continue to be free. If it was a really, really tight fit for COVID, you know, we just thought it would be best for the community to make those free. I'm going to get into some of these in a little bit more detail. So take a look at this. I want to, on our home page in the lower right hand corner, there is a What's New link. And from a legal perspective, I mean, it tells the story of COVID and how it impacted the market. I mean, I think it's quite an archive, right? That just, again, it kind of explains everything. In February of 2020, that was the first mention of the coronavirus toolkit, right? And then check out in March. I mean, the content plan just like, okay, forget about it. All hands on deck. We have to deal with this. Unless you're like an IP, like, I don't think that was impacted. But employment tractors. You've got federal agency response, like New York and California issued more guidance on things, you know, expert Q&A. Moving on to April, like that's when the first stimulus package came out. And so we were the ones to actually read that. I mean, I don't know how many of your busy attorneys, if yourself, can actually go in and read thousands of pages of legislation. Well, our attorneys get paid to, right? Certainly you guys could do it. Certainly a lot of people at your firm could do it, but like, you know, who's going to pay them to do it? Like, you have other things to do. So a lot of lawyers just relied on us, and librarians relied on us just to spell out the practical implications of things. But like, you know, you've got paid sick leave, like furlough notices. Unfortunately, that's when people started really getting laid off. Business mitigation for like reopening, more FAQs. And it's funny, I mean, you can go there and look at it, check out commercial transactions, real estate, labor and employment, like those areas are really impacted, litigation, courts closing and everything. So if you fast forward a year, like we're still updating things. Like we've got, you know, an expert Q&A on COVID passports and vaccination. That's the hottest topic right now. But we're having to, you know, as issues work their way through courts and states and things like that, we're having to substantially revise our resources. Like there's some case in the Seventh Circuit, Satin versus Southwest, that impacted our employment arbitration agreement, something COVID related there. We expanded the scope of our whistleblower reporting presentation materials because people are blowing the whistle on safety related things now, not just like white collar crime or corruption or things like that. I mean, we're working that into the resources. And look, and there's another mention of the business reopening. You know, they've been substantially revised because the CDC gives more guidance. And so we're constantly updating those resources to reflect a very moving target. A couple of examples. Force majeure was never really a hot topic. Maybe after 9/11, force majeure was a hot topic, but it's a hot topic now. How you word your force majeure clauses can be very, very important. Do you have to mention pandemic? Did you have to mention COVID specifically? Will coronavirus be broad enough for everything? Like, I don't know. And we'll see what the judges say about things. We've got a great state law chart. Like, very few litigators have actually litigated force majeure cases because it just wasn't done before, you know, unless they were around 9/11. We went through and literally read all force majeure cases. Like, that may seem like an overwhelming task, but there just aren't that many at all. So this is an excellent springboard. You go to your state, find out the key case for a force majeure in your state, and then click on that link, and boom, you're hopping into Westlaw, and you're going to have a much better Westlaw experience. For your summer associates or any new attorneys that are working on things. I mean, just to start with Westlaw and type out force majeure, it's like, oh my God, it's a universe of information. So this is really going to get them help and give them much more targeted research. Here's just a notice, a force majeure, like some sort of trigger event. Hey, the truck's not going to show up. Well, we have this great template that you can send out. I don't know if people have much previous work product for that stuff. Again, if they did, it's probably potentially decades old. So what's great about this is just a one-page agreement, really, but it's got 5 pages worth of drafting guidance. And our editors look at all of our standard documents from a very sympathetic perspective, from the associate who has to draft this for the first time to the partner that wants this delivered to her desk as close to zero error as possible. And so they put clause by clause, section by section, kind of expert level guidance every step of the way. Insurance coverage, is if when the trucks don't show up, people want to know like what their insurance coverage is. So we've got this great chart here. It's tens of hours of really tedious research here at your fingertips. It's research. It's not complex legal thinking. It's like tedious things that you have to do. Like it's almost like putting a list together of like black letter law. It just takes a lot of time to do that. So the fact that this stuff is here, people love it. People used to immediately litigate, if the truck didn't show up, but people are putting amendments together to their contracts. Like, okay, like we're all kind of screwed, right? So let's just amend our contract or even set up a payment plan. And again, all of these documents are gold standard. They're not contaminated by the previous client or situation, and they've all kind of have those drafting notes in there. So that's a lot of stuff for COVID, and it's still happening. I don't have to explain that to you all at all. So we did launch a commercial litigation last summer. We launched a few things last summer. So why commercial litigation? Probably don't have to explain it to you, but we did market research. We have a lot of procedural litigation resources, but we didn't have any substantive commercial litigation resources. So when we asked everybody, like, yeah, we've got our own, procedures and things like that, but we need the substantive stuff for the attorney working on like a motion. I mean, they can find lots of motions for a court that's well formatted, but what goes in the motion? What strategies go in there? So we have lots of clause that fits in with our procedural content really well. So we knew that we needed to do it. So we've got 3 dedicated commercial litigation full-time employees. That rounds out the group to actually we're over 60 employees or full-time editors on the litigation team. And they spent dozens of them worked on this, and they spent 2 years, and there was about 200 extra resources when it launched. So some reinforcing things. I know there's a lot going on here, but just check out the court trends right here. These are general commercial cases that are going through the courts, like the big picture. You can see it was going up and up. 2020 sank, of course, because the courts were closed, or a lot of them were. But you can see 2021 is off to a really good start. Like we're 1 quarter into it. And so that's probably going to stack, 3 times higher than we see right there. I know it's employment, not commercial, but, just check out the spike. And so I think this is a pretty good dramatic effect on business interruptions, right? And so this is the employment claims because of business interruptions. People got fired. When people aren't working, why aren't they working? Well, because the truck didn't show up. People couldn't make money. So I don't know what kind of tsunami of commercial litigation cases are coming, but it's going to be a big one. And then you have like things like the Suez Canal, right? Major business interruptions that interrupted business around the world. There's one little screw up right here, impacted hundreds of billions, if not more, trillions of dollars worth of products just being delivered, not just on that tanker, right? But the hundreds of tankers that couldn't make it through the canal, for a week. Texas's power crisis, that's going to trigger a lot of litigation right there. I mean, it was just a complete disaster. And in our force majeure resources, I mean, we actually talk about like pandemics, and we talk about like energy supply issues. So we explicitly state things that are going to be impacted here. So lots of commercial litigation coming on an already healthy market. So again, 2,200 new resources. Here's our topics right here: breach of contract, fraud, business torts, financial services. We have our practice notes, checklist, and then we have all sorts of really like substantive, meaty clauses that you can throw into our motions, or if the firm has their own motions. I mean, just copy and paste the clause. Like, there's the motion, it's well formatted, it's great. What kind of meat do you put in that thing? And we've got lots of stuff for that. And again, there's California, and then we have all the major states covered, where most of the commercial litigation is. We have to hire about 3 employees for each state, so it's we have to be strategic about where we go. Of course, Delaware is in there due to being Delaware, and that's where so many corporations are founded. That's their choice of law. I'm not going to read these to you, don't worry, but it's just a sample, or these are these subtopics that you'll find. And then we have our ever popular state Q&A topics. Like, for certain areas, our state Q&As actually get used more than any other resource, but we typically work with local leading counsel to provide those black letter answers that nobody wants to spend time researching, right? So it's those answers there at your fingertips, and you can compare multiple jurisdictions, no problem. Here's just a sample of the commercial litigation page. You got breach of contract, contract defenses, contract formation. Anytime, like one of your associates or one of your like younger lawyers gets, the partner says, hey, here's my precedent, update it, right? They go to look at it, and yeah, there's stuff in there, but each case is different. Each case is a fingerprint. You're trying to find a case that, that stands on all fours. It's great if you can find that, but that's just not always the case. So the poor attorney that has to take this first stab at drafting it, they're not being told why certain strategies were in there, what certain pitfalls, what should be in there, what shouldn't be in there. So even if they're going to use their partner's form, those drafting notes that we talked about are going to help them, again, deliver that work product up as close to zero error as possible. Significantly reduces the amount of time it takes to do this stuff. If you're a law firm work, sometimes that stuff isn't always billable, but it's going to give the younger associates a lot more confidence. And of course, the senior partners, senior attorneys are going to be a lot happier with that work product. They're going to save a lot of red ink, right? Because they're not marking up things as much as they did before. So that's commercial transactions. At the time, we also relaunched our life sciences and FDA regulatory. We did our customer research way back when. Everybody told us that the websites just aren't really user friendly. Guidance is harder to access. To be a really FDA expert, you actually have to go work at the FDA for the most part. And that's typically how it works. You have like a law firm attorney, and then maybe they're a senior associate, and they bounce to go work for the agency for 10, 20 years or whatever, build up all of that domain knowledge, which you can only get working at the FDA, and then come back and join another organization, a law firm, or say a Pfizer or something like that as their counsel. And really can give a lot of expertise, because otherwise you just can't get it. It's just not out there. And so we hired 2 dedicated attorneys. The first thing they did is they went through and just kind of reorganized everything. They both have agency experience. I think I have a slide on them. We'll see. But they practiced for decades, both of them at the FDA. They even added some new critical topics, and they've been maintaining things, updating things, then adding a whole lot of other things, and they're still banging things out a whole lot. So we knew there was market research. We knew that we needed to do it, but I mean, here's some reinforcing factors. It's very important to our economy. 25 cents of every dollar that's spent on things, right, is regulated by the FDA. I mean, just think of all the things that are in your refrigerator, in your cupboard, that are regulated by the FDA, in your bathroom. I mean, there's just so many things that we buy that are subject to regulation. Check out the medical devices, 2.7 million, medical devices just in 2019. Think of all the folks that are like making masks now, or some other kind of COVID-related remedy. If you're saying it does something medical, you may be subject to FDA regulation. And then there's the statute, the FFDC Act. It's an additive statute. It just grows and grows and grows over time. They never take anything away or modernize anything. It's a beast from what I understand. And just check out this chart over here on the right. These are all the submissions to the FDA for new products that need to get analyzed. So I mean, it's dramatic how much the increase is. 2021 again is looking really healthy there. So steady incline. So what do we do? So we took our existing topics, we added 3 new ones: medical devices, FDA admin and enforcement, and food, cosmetics, and dietary supplements. And then we had our existing topics before. So there were 100 resources in there, and we went to market with dozens more. Here's a sampling of some of the things. I'm not going to read this to you. Our clinical trials is very, very popular there. And imagine all of the trials on things that are going out right now. Again, medical devices, that's a very fluid market there. Big, huge organizations are working on that. Even small mom and pop things are working on those sorts of things. Food, cosmetics, think of like, even like cannabis, like, you get these CBD oils, you go into some of these cannabis stores and it looks like a high-end, like, salon or perfume counter or something like that. It's like, looks really expensive. And they're saying, oh, it does this, it does that. Well, you're making medical claims, right? And that's probably the biggest growing section of retail right there is the CBD cannabis industry. So that's that. If we keep on moving on, at the same time, we launched a new resource type, practical law videos. They're short, sweet, 3 to 18 minutes. It's both from our practical law staff as well as some experts out there in the field. I read a study literally earlier this week. 64% of any learner, or 64% of the population are visual learners. They like to see things, right? And so this, kind of complements with that. And this is great. One of your younger attorneys is that they're eating a sandwich. They can put on the video, right, and sit there and eat and get up to speed on a substantive topic pretty quick, in 3 to 8 minutes. And then there's links to all the other sorts of resources. So they get a little primer, and then they can dig as deep as they need to there. Moving right along. So healthcare. Probably don't tell you why we need healthcare, but I mean, it's a big business, right? It takes up 18% of our economy. We spend twice as much as any other country. There's over 750,000 companies that identify as a healthcare sector company. So it's really, really big. And check this out, insurance have grown, almost 800% since 1984. So it's big, big business, right? But there's pressure to this right now. Let's circle back to COVID. Right here, you can see the cases. Thank goodness it's, we had a big spike. Things are going down and stabilizing there. I think we're at 220 million vaccinations right now, but there's still a lot of people that aren't going to get vaccinated. So, we're still figuring things out there. You've heard of the silver tsunami. I think it's a cute term for the baby boomers that are retiring en masse. There is a whole lot of baby boomers that are out there, and older people are going to pressure the system. So here's the deal: when you have such a big business and it gets more and more pressure, right? More and more pressure means that more people are in the system, right? And that means there's going to be more payments: Medicaid paying folks, Medicare paying folks, people paying institutions, et cetera. And what happens when you have more money? Right, you're going to have more fraud and abuse. You can't have one without the other, right? Conservative estimates say that there's about a $68 billion fraud in healthcare claims. Some people said it's more like 230 billion. So it's big, big business, and with big business comes, consequences when things don't go well. And by healthcare, we're talking about really 2 things: payments, right, from to the institutions, to the practitioners, and the subsequent abuse. We're not talking about curing cancer, improving mental health. Core healthcare law is all about money. It's all about money, right? So, of course, we did market research, right? Law firms want it. They rated it 8.5 out of 10. Corporations want it even more, 9.25 out of 10. And there's not really any know-how resources that are out there right now. The main authority here kind of lacks in-depth and practical things. It might be more like one of those treatises or something that's just kind of, dusty, and maybe it was written by an expert 5 years ago. It's just not, it's full of like big lawyer words and things like that. And practical law, we don't write like that style at all. It's all brass tacks. We don't use fancy words or a Latin word when one simple small word will do. So yeah, everybody wants it, and they want it right now. A little shout out to Veruca Salt. Nobody wants things more than she does. Yeah. So what did we do? We hired 5 senior attorneys. I do have some slides for them. They are just rock stars. And they have 2 associates to help, like with research and maybe taking a first draft at certain things. We kind of work like a law firm in that regard. Here's our topics. Clinical trials is double coded. That is one of our most popular. I know you might be thinking, hold on, life sciences and FDA regulatory and now healthcare. Well, how do we slice that pie? Well, does the organization sell a thing or do they sell a service, right? If they sell drugs or pharmaceuticals, that's healthcare, that's life sciences and FDA regulatory. Do they sell, a medical practice, right? Treatments, those sorts of things that doctors do. Doctors are not regulated by the FDA at all. They are healthcare. So if it's a product or a service, products are going to be FDA regulatory, service is going to be healthcare. You have organizations like CVS, right, that do both. I went to CVS, I got my second COVID shot 2 weeks ago, and I picked up some Band-Aids because my kids are always skating and injuring themselves. So I got a service and I bought some products when I was there. So there is some overlap for sure. And this rounds out, we put in 2 state Q&As to go along with data breach. Data breach is very important with HIPAA laws and things like that. Oh, by the way, I've got a great HIPAA joke for you. I'll wait till we get there. Okay, so from the team, Virginia joined us after 25 years as a federal prosecutor, right? She also has law firm and in-house experience. Christy joined us. She was in-house. She worked at law firms as well. Their experience is so robust. Jane was this VP, president. She was at Epstein. She was at McDermott. Elizabeth Goldman. Liz is our payment and reimbursement specialist. They get into very special like tax and technical things that really aren't favorable for a lot of attorneys, right? If they were really, really good at numbers, and maybe they would have gone to medical school instead. So she's our specialist there. And then rounding out the group is Donna Cameron. Over 35 years of experience. Look at all the C-level jobs she's had, right? So chief legal officer, et cetera, president of a major medical association. I'll run out of breath if I say that all at once. So it's a very, very experienced team. I've heard them on webinars and they are just amazing. I hate when I go to a webinar, like you hear somebody reading something. This is just, it's in between their ears and they can just evangelize this practice area that they care so much about. So if we get into clinical trials, I'm not going to read all this stuff to you again. Don't worry, just going to have some sampling there. This was our most popular topic over in FDA, and somebody offering clinical trials. You may be treating somebody for cancer, so there's some overlap right there. You're treating them for cancer, but you're also using products, right? Or you're trialing something. So that's why that's going to appear in both of those practice areas, or the cross-practice collection and the practice area. When it comes to fraud, abuse, and compliance, if you screw up, you can get what's called the kiss of death, not you, but if an organization screws up, they can get what's called is the kiss of death. If they violate the Stark Law or the anti-kickback statute, if you do it enough, you can get kicked off of Medicare and Medicaid payment programs. You're blacklisted. And there's no undo button, folks. You are literally dead. Like that could end your business. That'd be like, if I developed tanks and I couldn't sell it to the Pentagon, right? Like, what are you going to do? We're going to do all those tanks, right? So it can be career or business ending like that. So here's again just some sampling of some things. Government recovered $2.6 billion last year in healthcare fraud and abuse alone. So they're recouping lots of stuff. There's a sampling of one of our crown jewels, the anti-kickback statute. This is you can't really get into healthcare without knowing this in detail. And so look at these nice, lovely bullet points. No terribly scary paragraphs or anything. Like this is what your associates would get if they were to go walk down the hall and ask a partner, hey, what's up with this anti-kickback statute? This is the type of conversation they would have. No historical fat, no intellectual noise. Boop, boop, boop. This is exactly what you need to worry about. Okay, so when it comes to entity formation and governance, when you form your institutions, they have to be structured a certain way. When you train your employees on compliance, you have to do that every now and then, and every year, they have to update their compliance and their training programs, and they have to do that if they want to stay in the good graces of the government, paying through Medicare and Medicaid. And if they don't do it, if they're not compliant, then again, they're going to get that kiss of death. Certain hospitals, in order to be tax exempt or nonprofit, like there's certain thresholds, a certain amount of patients or people under a certain income, they have to provide services for free in order to stay in the good graces of the IRS as well. And if you don't do things right, here comes the angel of death coming to give you a kiss, or you can get in big trouble there. Where did my mouse go? Okay, my mouse is gone. Okay, here we go. Patient privacy and security. So, I mean, obviously HIPAA is major legislation. Jane, can you entertain me for a second and unmute yourself?
Sure.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
HIPAA.
HIPAA who?
I can't tell you. Huh? Find a better HIPAA joke. Okay. But here you go. So HIPAA's, oh, thank you, Jane. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. But here you can see just a sampling of some of the scenarios. Hospital patient data was breached. I mean, these data breaches are a when, not an if. We've got, data breach plans, incident response plans, getting your incident response team together. I mean, there's just a wealth of information that's in there. And that's one of those things, even if you have that domain knowledge, when it happens, whoever is working on this, they get 15 things on their desk, but nothing's more important to the client than your attorneys getting back to them as quickly as possible. So the plain language, maintained nature of practical law really helps them disseminate their own expertise faster, and in many cases better. Like I've heard many times, like, oh my gosh, you actually write about what I do better than I ever could. Because I'm sure you've heard that before, that I would have written a shorter letter if I had more time. Well, practical law's editors are paid to take the time to spell it out and make it as concise as possible.
Okay. Hey, Craig,
yes.
Now that you've unmuted me, it's all your fault. So now I can ask you a few questions. This is just for me, just a reinforcement of what maintained means. We're seeing that on the slides. There was one that was updated through a day earlier this week specifically, but instead we're seeing maintained. So can you just remind us what that means, please?
So that's our designation that thing is current, right? Our editors, we use web crawling software to troll any legal authority that you can think of. From a judge's chamber to the SEC's website, any and all authorities in between. And if something pops up, like what we do is the software tells us something on this page has changed. And so one of our junior editors or associate editors will go and see that change, like if it's a formatting change, like whatever, but it's substantive. If it's substantive, they'll put a summary together and they send a report around a few times a day to the senior attorneys and they triage it. Like, so what? Does this trigger maintenance on a resource? Oh my God, is this a new stimulus package? Like 5,000 pages, let's figure out what to do with this, and make new resources, or just maybe make a little legal update. So maintained, again, just means that it's current. We maintain things so much that it gets kind of monotonous to have that timestamp date. For those resources like that state chart, there's 50 states, right? So we just put the timestamp on there just to be like, okay, so like we're doing our best here, like, but it's 50 states. So you might want to double check. As you can tell, as you saw, it was updated on Monday. Is that good?
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okie dokie. I mean, when you go talk to an expert, right, you want the brass tacks. You don't ask the expert, well, when's the last time you changed your mind on this? So again, it's about connecting your attorneys and yourselves to expertise. Right, to an expert. And in any case, like I don't care if you're at Home Depot or Banana Republic or the grocery store, if you have to get help from an associate, right? What's it take 5 seconds to know if you're talking to an expert or somebody who's just a complete waste of your time. People know when they start reading their stuff that they're talking to an expert there. Okay, so here's our general healthcare topic that has kind of everything else, kind of a catch-all for everything else. So telehealth, AI and healthcare, et cetera. And then we have our very ever popular state Q&A, like data breach laws, fraud and abuse. States may have additional laws that you need to be concerned about. And so this, if our national jurisdiction neutral resource gets you, 80% of the way there, this may help you, get you another 10%. You're still gonna have to do some work, right? There's no doubt about that. Okie dokie. So let's talk about sectors, Wrong slide. The sectors was launched yesterday. Sorry, that was an artifact from the previous slide. So it was literally launched April 28th, yesterday. Why sectors? Well, people asked about it, right? We've actually had sector content for quite some time, but it was kind of buried in other practice areas. But take a look at bullet point number 2. I'm sure you know some practitioners. I mean, they don't identify as necessarily a transactional attorney or a litigator or a labor and employment attorney. They are an oil and gas attorney, or they are a retail specialist, right? Or they do food and drug, right? Like that's just what they do. So they identify with that. And so we reorganized our content. There's over 3,000 existing resources that are a good fit. And our editors are very conservative. They don't just throw a bunch of resources in there to inflate numbers. I mean, they have a sniff test, right? Is this good? Is this bad? And they collaborate with each other to make sure that it's actually substantive and it's actually a good fit. Again, they're not going to throw in noise. We created 10 sectors, and we actually have over 60 new resources there. I asked yesterday, and I was like, okay, no, there's actually a whole lot more. Take a look at the 2 new topics, oil and gas. This is where I thought we were going to have 25 net new, but we have a new editor that came on, and she's just a rock star. And I think we launched with 49 yesterday. Media is also going to be new, and there was 15 new resources in media. I'll get into more details in a second. The healthcare practice area, as long as the 2 cross-practice collections are the same, right? So we just double-coded that to the sectors page. And then you have all of this reorganized content. So I'll kind of dive into this just a little bit. When it comes to oil and gas, we have Kurt McGee joined us after 15 years of experience. He's also board certified. He said that certification was harder than passing the bar. Maria joined us. She has an extensive in-house experience. She also worked at a law firm, but she's done all sorts of any sort of deal that you can think of in the oil and gas industry. It's very acquisition heavy. It's a lot of movement there. And so, yeah, it's no doubt that, U.S. we use more oil and gas than any country, but we've got the 9th largest oil reserves. Was the shale's opening up, kind of revolutionized the industry. So it's big business. We're focusing on midstream and upstream. So upstream is getting the stuff out of the ground. Midstream is transporting it. And that was rated higher as a need than downstream. Downstream is where they turn it into a product like gasoline or motor oil. So that's what we're focusing on. And here's just a sampling of some of the documents. The law firms and the companies that are in this sector, they're still going to use their own forms. I mean, they have proprietary forms they've always used, they will always use them. So that's why our forms, they may not use our forms at all, but those drafting notes, the poor associate who looks at this form for the first time, the partner says, don't you dare use anything else. Well, they come get our drafting notes or a checklist just to make sure everything's buttoned up, or a practice note. So even though this sector and a lot of sectors are still going to use their own work product, we're still very complementary with that. Media and entertainment. A couple of our attorneys here. Look at Meryl. She was at NBC, Fox, USA, Showtime, and when she's got to make up her mind, right? But she was also at Clearly Gottlieb. Laura joined us from NBC Universal. Of course, she had law firm experience as well. And not for nothing, the director of the IP and tech service, and most of the stuff is IP and tech. It's got some peppering of different other practice areas too. She worked at HBO. Before that, she was at Paul Weiss and Walt Gottschall. So that's the director of the service, coming from one of the largest media companies in the world. Here's some insights. It's big business. 717 billion a year. Music industry alone, 170 billion. 2.47 million jobs. It's very, very important to our economy. Here's one of my favorite recent series right here. WandaVision. It's very clever. It takes you a few episodes to understand what's happening, but it's very clever. And here's our subtopics. Right, so IP, film. We're focusing more on TV and film production right now. So it'd be good for producers or people who represent producers that have to go shop a script around different studios. And so let's talk about the reorganized content. Doing good on time. So it's alcohol, tobacco, and cannabis. It's funny. I think this is funny. We were going to call this highly regulated topics, right? But they wanted to be a little bit more explicit. if you went to practical law right now, on Tuesday, and let's say that you represented a hotel chain, right? And you have to consider all of your training obligations for employees that serve alcohol. Where would you even start? Like practice areas? Like what is that? Is it labor and employment? Because they're employees? Is it commercial transactions? Because it's doing business to consumer? Like what is it? Or you go to the subtopic, and which subtopic would you go into? Like ABC, right? Alcohol beverage compliance, right there. So much better user experience for all of your for yourself and all of your attorneys. Construction. So we do have a
Hey,
construction.
Craig.
Yes.
I know we were trying to stay on time, so I'm sorry to interrupt you. But I'm keeping an eye on chat, but if anyone has a question, if you could get that entered now, and I'll make sure that Craig has a moment or two to answer that. And Craig, maybe if I can ask what I was thinking.
Yes.
And it was really when you were showing the cannabis thing, I was kind of thinking, well, say I'm somebody who is brand new to that area of the law, that sector. Am I correct in that we have toolkits for certain, like sort of where would be the starting point in terms of familiarizing yourself?
Search for cannabis toolkit, and it's everything we have on that topic.
Okay.
That's rapidly evolving.
Right. And kind of start with that overview, that practice note that gives the basics.
Yeah, there'll be an overview, then there'll be more discrete topics.
Right.
And then there'll be state level information, like which states is it legal, is it illegal, or is medical marijuana legal, or is it recreation? It's very changes all the time.
Right. And I was going to say, it was so long ago that I went to law school, but there may have been, when we were still able to really bill by time quite freely, there was maybe even a bit of, bragging rights to say, oh, I had to search for 20 states and put together this chart, and it took me so long. And, and I know from working with folks now, that's just not the case. You just simply don't have that luxury, but you do have to get it right. So again, I know,
we have that in our, it's funny to watch our subscribers, like on a training session, like, oh my God, you have that? Because our editors make things that they wish they had when they're practicing. Like, oh my God, I got this assignment one time. I only got it once, but it was the biggest pain in the butt, right? And so it's like a gift from God, some of these resources. Save so much time.
Yeah. Well, I don't see any specific questions from our audience.
I can brief the other ones really quick if you like. I've just got a few more slides.
Sure, go right ahead.
Construction topic, way broader than the construction topic under real estate. Construction projects have finance issues. So we've got lending, all sorts of different things. Food and beverage is going to be in here. That alcohol compliance shows up over here as well. Much easier navigation. Here's your retail topics, from advertising down to supply chain. Bankruptcy, unfortunately, is happening in this age of Amazon. And then there's going to be technology too. Here's our technology page for a practice area, but then take a look at all of these subtopics. So if you're into drones or software licensing, you're going to have a much better time. Okay, so there we go. And scene.
Thank you, Craig. That was great. I learned some new stuff as I always do. But yeah, I was thinking, didn't the sectors just get released yesterday? Yep. I was glad I hadn't missed it.
Yep.
I would have felt pretty silly.
The first thing I checked yesterday morning.
Yeah, but thank you to everyone for Oh, I've got a question. And you'll have to do this very quickly, Craig. How do you explain the difference between Practical Law and Practical Law Connect?
So practical is practical law that's been enhanced by a task-based navigation. So what our editors did is, instead of going by practice area, they organized everything by task. They didn't stop there. They actually integrated all Thomson Reuters resources from Westlaw, Business Law Center, and the editors went through and handpicked individual resources to put on each specific practice page. So it's a great platform for not just accessing practical law resources more intuitively, but the universe of Westlaw and other Thomson Reuters resources at the same time.
Well, I can tell you, librarians love curated resources. So, hey, they'll love Practical Law Connect. And I'll just mention before we do the drawing that You know, we really focused on the content here. If you have a question about subscription or you're not sure if you have access to this tool, feel free to reach out to me. You certainly can reach out to whomever you normally would, like a client manager. But if you're unsure, feel free to reach out to me and I'll make sure you get connected with the right person. But thanks again for having us. So let's give away some stuff.
Available to all PL users.
Yes.
Think anybody can browse PLC Practical Law Connect, but to click on the resources, you're bound by your terms and conditions of your subscription.
Right. Thanks, Craig.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you very much, Jane and Craig. That I learned so much. I'm wondering if perhaps you could put your email addresses in chat in case anyone has follow-up questions. That would be really helpful. But now we're moving on to the drawing part of the program, and we'd like your help, Craig and Jane. Just before we do the drawing, if you didn't hear or read the chat before, we need your first and last name in order to get your prize to you. So if you could update your Zoom name with your first and last name, that would be very helpful. And if you don't want to enter in the drawing, that's fine. You don't need to do that. Okay, so we have two $25 gift cards that we're going to draw first. Delia, our wonderful NoCal Institute chair, is going to tell us how many people we have in the drawing. And then I'm going to ask Jane to pick one number and Craig to pick one number so that we can get our winners.
So we need numbers between 1 and 30.
Okay, Jane, so do you have a number between 1 and 30? And this is for a $25 gift card. And just to remind you, the gift card is your choice. So you get to pick what vendor or what store your gift card comes from. Okay, Jane?
27.
That is
I'm gonna go
Mr.
with
Martin
23.
Korn.
Oh,
I'm gonna go
Sorry.
Oh, should I wait? Sorry.
Yeah, why don't we wait?
Sorry, I can choose a different number.
So 27 is Martin Korn.
Great. Congratulations, Martin. Okay, and Craig, a number between 1 and 30, that's not 27.
I was gonna go with 23. What's this number?
That is David, and I'm going to mispronounce the last name, Isam or Isam.
Great, congratulations.
yay, David.
Okay, next we have two $50 gift cards. So Craig, why don't we start with you? Another number.
How about number 10, Lionel Messi's number?
That would be John Gross.
Congratulations. Okay, and Jane? Another number?
The pressure's on. I'm going to pick number 1.
That is David Holt.
Woo.
I figured maybe he signed in, he joined first. I don't know if that's the case. It may not be, but I was
He gets rewarded for that.
making
Okay.
a value judgment in the drawing, which I really didn't need to do, but you know.
Okay, and then finally we have a $100 gift card. Which of you wants to choose?
Jane, please.
My dog Lucy is 5, so I will pick 5.
That will be David McFadden. Yep, there we go.
I hope David likes dogs.
All right, guys, I will contact you within the next couple of days with with a follow-up for the gift card. Craig, Jane, thank you so much for doing this for us and obviously for sponsoring our institute and continuing to sponsor it as you have for very many years. I'm a big fan of practical law, so hopefully more and more attorneys, especially, I think it's great for summers and first years. So hopefully more attorneys will get exposed to it as well. We are running a little bit late, so we will be moving to the next session, which starts at 1 p.m. I hope everybody, I'm going to close this meeting and then restart it because of roll call purposes. It's going to be the Institute for the Future of Law Practice, which is a nonprofit that is training law students and legal professionals on how to succeed in the modern law practice world. So I hope to see everybody there in 10 minutes. So I can go get my cup of coffee. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Delia. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.